For the next section here, we're going to focus on scripture and sound, including some samples of recitation. What is sound? According to modern and contemporary science, sound is simply a vibration. If you examine the core of an atom, you will realize that all matter is one. This is from the perspective of Hindus who ascribe to the Vedas an Advaitic conclusion, which is arrived at according to the focus on nuclear science and the concepts of Albert Einstein. In physics more broadly, sound is a vibration that propagates as an acoustic wave through a transmission medium such as gas, liquid, or solid. In human physiology and psychology, sound is the reception of such waves and the reception by an individual perceiver, a human brain perhaps, an animal brain also perhaps. So in this sense, if a tree falls in the forest and there's nothing to perceive it, there is no sound. But we're getting rather metaphysical there. All this world is one flood of energy from Vedic perspectives, Shakti. Everything is an electromagnetic flow from theoretical physics perspectives. But how do we account for the manifestation of different objects? Is it to be attributed to different types of vibrations? Where there is a vibration, there is a sound. Conversely, to produce a sound, the vibrating or correspondence to the vibration must also be created by an object. The scientific concept is that there are different vibrations of the same energy, which then cause the creation of some type of belief that there's some type of potential for an underlying sort of consciousness if we compare this to Vedic understandings of the same concept, sort of like a universal breath that could be heard. The Vedas are called Shruti, which is based on the root srota or strotra, which means ear. The Vedas have been handed down orally from generation to generation and have not been taught or learned specifically from written texts. So this is how they got the name Shruti. Why were these scriptures not permitted to be written down? Because the sound of the Vedas cannot be properly transcribed in Brahmi scripts, in South Asian scripts. There are sounds or phonemes that we might call kind of like diphthongs for the sake of simplicity that cannot be accurately represented by any known script. For instance, there's one between a ja and a la, jla. It's quite difficult to represent. Such sounds have been learned simply by listening to them and then repeating them. Besides, there are different rules for Vedic mantras. These are tonal variations and understandings of proper accentuation. So there's udatta, which is a raised syllable. There's anudatta, which is a lowered syllable. And there's svarita, which is a falling syllable. So there are tonal understandings to this as well, even though Sanskrit itself is not a tonal language. Mistakes in enunciation are likely even if there was going to be some type of diacritical notation or some other marks are used in the printed text. Wrong chanting will not bring about the desired results in Vedic understandings. There is much difference in the vibrations caused by the pronouncing of an individual syllable, laying stress upon it, and pronouncing it without any stress. This is similar to any language. Correspondingly, there will be changes in our feelings and urges from the divine forces that rule that nature from a Vedic understanding. There is a story about Taittiriya in the Samhita of the Vedas, which illustrates how wrong chanting can produce results contrary to what is intended. Svasta, the divine carpenter, chanted a mantra with the object of begetting a son who would be the slayer of Indra. But he went wrong in the intonation of some of the syllables. So, unwittingly, he prayed for a son who would be slain by Indra instead of one who would slay that celestial deity. And his prayer, that had gone wrong in the intonation, was properly answered. When the wavelength shifts, even minutely, in our conception of sound or waves, like a radio, if you tune a radio ever so slightly, you receive a different broadcast or a different transmitting station. Fine-tuning has to be done to get the required station. So, in this sense, the intonation of the Vedas has to be fine-tuned in order to get the proper communication across. There should be not the slightest mistake in svaras, or pronunciation of the svaras. Just as we receive a different station on our radio when the wavelength is changed, so the result is different if we were to go wrong with the intonation. So for this activity, you're going to watch a couple samples of chanting of the Vedas and keep the following questions in mind when you're watching and also for your commentary on the post. You might also know other features that just sort of jump out to you or questions you might have, right? So first, what do you notice about the physical motions? What do you notice about the tone, the sound? Why might all of this be important? Just looking at the imagery, and do you have any other general comments or observations about this series of clips? And you could put questions up as well. But again, if you're responding directly to somebody, continuing their train of thought, jumping on what they had to say, please do reply directly to them so we can keep several threads going sort of thematically at once. Enjoy!